Welcome to the What's Happening Birmingham video podcast.
Hello everyone, this is Jarvis Escott with What's Happening in Birmingham. Today I have the honor and pleasure of being with Miss Crystal Mullen-Johnson. She is CEO and founder of Strive Counseling Services, LLC. Crystal, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jarvis. Thank you for having me
Thank you for
on your segment.
Yes, thank you for taking time out your day.
Absolutely.
For me and you that don't know, this is actually Valentine's week. So I want to do something different this week called and focusing on love and relationships. So this is actually a 5-part series that you're going to see Monday through Friday. So we're doing part 1 today. So the first topic we're going to talk about is the most popular, you probably hear a lot now in love and relationship, is ghosting. What is that?
Ghosting is a experience that men and women may have had while being in a relationship or involved with someone where abrupt communication is cut off. You may see like a disappearing act where the person may block you from social media. That person may block you from, being able to contact them on the telephone. You may see where as many attempts you try to reach out to them, they may not respond to your text messages or phone calls. So it's like a disappearing act. And it makes individuals feel very uncomfortable because you have to think about it, Jarvis. When you're having consistent communication with someone, you start to develop an expectation. You start to expect that pattern of communication to be consistent. And then all of a sudden, this person just vanished off of, the map, meaning, there's no communication at all. So that leaves an individual feeling shame and guilt, and they start to question themselves, blaming themselves for the disappearing act, and that can be difficult for some people to process. So to answer your question, that's what ghosting is. It's like there's consistent communication, which communication is key. We'll talk more about communication throughout the segment.
Yes.
But you notice there's an abrupt change in the dynamic of the relationship and the communication between the two of those individuals.
So, common question you always want to ask yourself is, did I do something wrong? Was it me?
Right.
And is it right or wrong for a person to kind of feel that way? Like if something they did to make that person just go ghost on them?
Well, I think that's a natural emotion. You do question, your behaviors, or some people do question their behaviors and wonder what they've done to contribute to that person, separating from them, especially if it has been consistent, and then if emotions have been displayed in the relationship, that is definitely difficult for a person to have to process. Now, just because they're questioning it doesn't mean that they are the reason why the communication stopped. So that's why it's really important to be self-aware when you're involved with someone, and really try to observe an individual's patterns, like behavior patterns, and look for red flags. Sometimes the red flags are there, but many times we're just ignoring them.
Could a red flag be that they'll just be communicating with you just constantly, or they may have a communication pattern where they'll call you on their way to work, and it's that consistent every day, or they'll call you right before the night is over with, and things like that. So it's nothing that you can be like, man, I can pinpoint, like, okay, that's what the communication broke down in.
Yeah, I think those 3 that you named are red flags. When you notice that a person is only communicating with you during certain segments of their day, when you notice a person can only see you, during their selected time, or when you recognize they're talking to you during a certain time, is it night or is it day? Is it on their lunch break? So, there can be all types of red flags. And also just listen to what that individual is saying to you. Some people are really great at being manipulative. So just identify, is this person really modeling what they're saying? Because it's just not about the conversation, it's about the action as well. So look at their actions and make sure that their actions are consistent, and make sure it aligns with what you believe in and what you want out of a relationship. If it doesn't, maybe it's not a good fit for you. I think a lot of times we end up compromising our needs just to have someone to be a filler in our life, and we don't need to do that. We definitely need to have standards and make sure that the person that you're involved with, that their beliefs align with the things that you believe in, and make sure that the type of relationship that you're developing with them is a relationship that you truly want.
So should you take a ghosting person back?
No. Actually, once you recognize the behavior, definitely you need to create boundaries. You never know the root of the behavior, but if you take that individual back, it's likely that that behavior will continue. So that's why I mentioned that it's very important to establish boundaries and not allow anyone to overstep your boundaries. You have emotional needs, so that can be emotionally scarring for someone to constantly allow an individual to neglect their emotional needs. That's called negligence. And emotionally negligent. And I mean, don't allow that to happen.
All right, I want to go back a few moments. You was talking about emotional bonds. So, in your professional opinion,
Sure.
talking to a person every day, that builds that emotional, is that just as strong as, I want to say, intimacy in a way?
Well,
physical intimacy, talking to that person?
Communication is a form of intimacy, and I think many people need to understand that communication is intimacy. Definitely, communication increases individual's emotional bonding with each other. So that constant communication is increasing trust, right? Respect, and those are some foundational components of a relationship, a healthy relationship. So that definitely need to be reciprocal, the communication, okay? And when that form of intimacy is expressed between the two, I mean, quite naturally, you want to spend a lot of time with each other. So, I mean, that should be something that you constantly invest in the relationship, that consistent communication to increase connectivity.
All right. So, any kind of final thoughts you want to add to this subject?
In relation to the ghosting, well, I just would like to say, if you recognize ghosting, I think you should be really responsive to it. And if you have experienced it, don't second guess who you are. Nurture your self-esteem throughout this process. And for some people, it could be like a loss. Like you can have like a grief response, depending on, what was invested in that particular relationship, like how much time and effort. So if there's a emotional response to that, or you feel like it's a loss, identify what you can do different, like going forward when you're connecting to someone. Why don't you take some time to write down the pros and cons of, being involved with that person. That will probably help you find or identify some red flags that was involved in that relationship. Sometimes it's difficult for us to avoid these situations because you don't expect that to happen. It's difficult for us to be vulnerable, and when we are vulnerable, we don't want to be taken advantage of. So don't allow that experience to hinder you from connecting to someone in the future or forming a healthy relationship. But do educate yourself on what a healthy relationship should look like and what it should feel like. Because if it makes you feel uncomfortable when you're involved with someone, maybe that's not the very best fit for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more question that came in my head with this segment. Is there ever an acceptable excuse a person could offer someone to say why they ghosted on them? And I'm going to go somewhere with this is that, my parents were sick, or loved one, my family died, or I lost my job, or I'm going through financial problems, or is that ever an acceptable excuse a person should accept from somebody that just cut the emotional umbilical cord, I like to say?
Well, those are excuses, as you mentioned. And I think that regardless of all of those things happening in life, because life does happen, there are situations which I consider crises that happen. But although that could be an issue, like, you know, something happening to your parents, job loss, stress related factors, you still can communicate that. I mean, so it's still a red flag if you're not communicating those issues. How can you strengthen a relationship when you're avoiding a person? Avoidance is an issue in a relationship if you're not directly, you know, attacking, or I would say addressing those issues that are ahead of us or in front of us. So we have to be able to connect with the person that we deem, or I should say consider, as significant. Now, the red flag in that situation, does he consider her, or does she consider him as significant enough to share those factors or those crises that you just mentioned? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that would be a red flag. Like, this person is not communicating to you those things that are significant and meaningful in their life. And we do need that, right? We want to feel belong in a relationship, like we belong in the relationship, okay?
All right. Well, Chris, right before I go, can you just give them a little information about yourself? Why you got into
Of course. I'm Crystal Mullen-Johnson, as Jarvis mentioned, the CEO and founder of Strive Counseling Services, located downtown Birmingham. It's a private practice, and I work with couples. I provide individual counseling to adults and children. So thank you again, Jarvis, for having me.
And they would like to get in contact with you. What's your contact?
Sure, absolutely. I'm on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Strive Counseling Services. Also on Instagram, Strive Counseling. You can contact me via email, cmullenj@strivebhm.com. My phone number is 205-721-9893. And this is really important. My website is www.strive, and that's STRIVEBHM.com. Thank you, Jarvis.
Crystal, thanks again.
Of course,
and,
it's a pleasure. I enjoy
and look forward for part 2, because
Yes.
part 2 we're going to talk about relationship counseling. Who should get it?
Yes.
So thanks again, Crystal.
Absolutely.
And for more videos, please check out my website, what'shappeningbirmingham.com, or check out my YouTube channel. Thank you all again, and see you again.
Thank you.
Soon. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching the What's Happening Birmingham video podcast. Please check out our website, app, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest videos today.